Most men think emotional attachment disappears the moment a woman is no longer physically around you. If she's not constantly texting, calling, or trying to see you, they assume the emotional connection must be fading. But that's usually because men misunderstand how deep female attachment actually works. A woman who feels emotionally connected to you does not suddenly stop feeling because distance appears. In many cases, her attachment becomes quieter, more indirect, and far more subtle. And this is exactly where most men become confused. They look for loud reassurance while missing the invisible patterns happening underneath. Because emotionally attached women often continue expressing connection in ways that don't immediately look romantic. Through timing, through emotional memory, through attention that quietly keeps returning to you even when there's no pressure to do it. That's why some women stay emotionally present in your life long after the conversation should have naturally faded. And the strange part is, they often do this without fully realizing how much they're revealing. Most men miss it because the signs look too small, but the deeper the attachment becomes, the less obvious it usually appears. One of the biggest mistakes men make is assuming attachment should always look intense. Constant messages, obvious pursuit, dramatic emotional expression. But deep emotional attachment rarely behaves that way. In fact, many emotionally attached women become more controlled when distance enters the picture. Not less attached, more careful. They stop trying to force attention and instead reveal themselves through consistent emotional presence. And there's an important difference between isolated behavior and emotional patterns. One random message means nothing. One quick reply means nothing. One late-night conversation means nothing by itself. But when small behaviors repeat naturally across time, they start revealing emotional investment. This is why emotionally intelligent men stop obsessing over single moments and start paying attention to continuity. Because attachment is usually hidden inside repeated emotional return. She keeps finding subtle ways to stay connected to your emotional world, even when there's no obvious reason to. And once you understand this, female behavior starts becoming much clearer. The first sign is simple, but most men overlook it because it feels too small to matter. She keeps finding quiet reasons to remain mentally present in your life. Men often expect attachment to look like obvious pursuit, but emotionally attached women rarely move with that kind of direct energy for long. Instead, they maintain connection through soft continuity, a random message during the day. A meme connected to something you said 2 weeks ago. A small video that somehow relates to an inside joke you forgot existed. These moments seem casual on the surface, but emotionally, they reveal something important. You stayed in her mind when you weren't physically present, and that matters more than most men realize. A woman who is emotionally detached usually communicates only when there's immediate purpose or convenience. But emotionally attached women continue emotional threads long after practical reasons disappear. She reconnects to emotional moments because internally, the connection still feels active to her. This does not mean obsession. It means emotional relevance. And emotionally relevant people continue appearing naturally in the mind. Most men miss this because they're waiting for grand gestures. But attachment often hides inside consistency, not intensity. Maybe she sees a quote that instantly reminds her of a conversation you had once. Maybe she sends you something random with almost no context attached to it. To most people, it looks insignificant. But emotionally, she's maintaining a thread. She's continuing emotional presence across distance. And the important part is not the message itself. It's the fact that she keeps mentally circling back towards you without needing a strong external reason. That behavior matters more than it seems. But texting patterns alone still don't reveal the deepest layer of attachment. The deeper signs usually show themselves through memory. An emotionally attached woman remembers emotional details most people completely forget. Men often focus on obvious attention because it feels easier to measure. Compliments, excitement, physical affection. But female attachment often reveals itself through emotional memory. She remembers things connected to your emotional state, your stress, your routines, your small preferences, the specific way you sounded when something was bothering you. These details stay with her because emotionally attached women naturally begin organizing emotional information around the people they care about. And the strange thing is, women rarely announce this directly. You usually notice it unexpectedly. Weeks later, she asks about something small you casually mentioned once and assumed disappeared into the conversation forever. Maybe you mentioned being nervous about a family issue. Maybe you casually said you had trouble sleeping before important work meetings. Maybe you once admitted something that slightly bothered you emotionally. Most people forget those details quickly, but emotionally attached women often store them quietly. This is one of the clearest differences between surface attraction and deeper emotional investment. Surface attraction notices appearances. Emotional attachment notices emotional patterns. She starts paying attention to your moods, timing, habits, and emotional shifts because internally, your emotional world has started becoming psychologically important to her. And this is where many men misunderstand female behavior completely. They assume women become attached through dramatic declarations. But mature emotional attachment often looks calm, observant, quietly attentive. She may never directly say how much she cares, but her memory keeps revealing it anyway. Because emotionally invested people naturally remember what emotionally affects you. And this is where attachment starts becoming visible even during silence. Not through what she says loudly, but through what she continues noticing when nobody is forcing her to pay attention. The third sign appears in a place where most men either become delusional or completely blind: online behavior. Social media alone means almost nothing, but emotional patterns inside digital behavior can quietly reveal attachment when viewed calmly and realistically. Emotionally attached women often become emotionally selective online, not performative, selective. Her attention toward you starts carrying a different level of consistency compared to everyone else. Maybe she disappears socially for hours, but somehow notices your story quickly. Maybe her replies to you consistently carry more emotional energy than her responses to others. Maybe she reacts subtly instead of dramatically, but she continues maintaining low-pressure engagement across time. This matters because emotional attachment creates subconscious attention. People naturally monitor what emotionally matters to them. Now, this is where many men become unhealthy and obsessive. They start overanalyzing every like, every view, every online movement. That's not emotional intelligence. Real emotional awareness focuses on repeated patterns, not isolated digital behavior. One fast reply means nothing. One viewed story means nothing. But consistent emotional attention over time usually reflects emotional relevance underneath. And emotionally attached women often reveal this unintentionally. She may not openly chase conversation, but she quietly maintains awareness of your presence. She keeps emotional connection alive in small ways that feel almost invisible unless you understand what you're looking at. Most men miss this because the behavior feels too subtle. But subtle attention is often more emotionally honest than dramatic performance. Loud online behavior can be attention-seeking. Quiet consistency usually comes from emotional investment. But the strongest signs of attachment usually happen outside direct communication entirely. One of the clearest signs a woman feels emotionally attached to you is that you continue appearing in conversations when you're not even there. Most men think if she isn't directly speaking to them, then emotionally she must not be thinking about them. But emotionally attached women often keep emotionally important people psychologically present through indirect conversation. She brings up your name naturally during unrelated moments. She references something you said while talking with friends. She casually asks mutual people about you without making it obvious, not in a dramatic way, in a psychologically normal way. Because emotionally attached people naturally integrate emotionally relevant people into their mental world. Sometimes you only discover this accidentally. A mutual friend casually mentions that she brought you up during conversation. Or someone tells you she remembered a story you shared. And these moments matter because they reveal emotional continuity happening privately, outside your direct presence. Most attraction disappears once attention disappears. Emotional attachment behaves differently. Even during absence, the person continues existing psychologically in her emotional space. That's why emotionally attached women often mention a man naturally without fully realizing they're doing it. He has become emotionally familiar inside her internal world. And the important thing here is balance. This doesn't mean every mention equals deep love. But repeated emotional inclusion across time usually reveals ongoing emotional relevance, especially when there's no obvious social benefit attached to it, because emotionally attached women continue emotionally carrying certain people with them, even quietly, and eventually attachment reaches a point most men completely misunderstand. Distance begins affecting her emotionally more than she openly admits. Men often expect attachment to look expressive and obvious, but many women respond to deep attachment by becoming quieter, not louder, especially emotionally mature women. The deeper the emotional investment becomes, the more vulnerable distance starts feeling internally. You notice it in subtle shifts. Her energy changes slightly when communication becomes colder. She tries to act normal, but something feels emotionally different underneath. Her responses become more careful, sometimes softer, sometimes slightly withdrawn. Not because she stopped caring, but because emotional distance affects attached people internally before it appears externally. This is something most men completely misread. They think emotional quietness always means emotional detachment. But sometimes, emotionally attached women become more emotionally controlled precisely because the connection matters to them. They don't want to expose too much vulnerability. They don't want to feel emotionally unstable. So instead of dramatic expression, you often see emotional restraint mixed with subtle emotional pull. Maybe she pretends everything is fine while quietly becoming more emotionally sensitive to your absence. Maybe she tries maintaining emotional composure while still finding small reasons to reconnect. And this behavior matters because emotional attachment creates emotional impact even during silence. Most men miss this because they only trust loud emotions. But deep attachment is often revealed by emotional shifts that happen underneath the surface, especially during periods of distance, uncertainty, or reduced communication. And this leads to the deepest sign of all. The strongest attachment signs are rarely verbal. They rarely arrive through dramatic confessions or perfect clarity. Most of the time, they appear through what she continues doing when there's no pressure, no audience, and no obligation to maintain emotional connection. That's the part most men never notice. Real attachment quietly survives absence. Because real emotional attachment is not constant attention, it's emotional continuity. Temporary attraction disappears when stimulation disappears. Emotional attachment doesn't. It keeps returning quietly through memory, attention, curiosity, emotional monitoring, and subtle reconnection. That's why emotionally attached women often continue finding small pathways back toward you, even during busy periods, silence, or emotional distance. Not because they're trying to manipulate you, because emotionally, the connection still feels active inside them. You remain emotionally present in their internal world. She may not text constantly. She may not openly confess feelings. She may even create emotional space sometimes. But despite all of that, she keeps emotionally circling back. Through remembering details, through quiet online attention, through emotional sensitivity to distance, through subtle reconnecting behaviors that seem small individually but become deeply meaningful when repeated consistently over time. And this is the difference between attention and emotional investment. Attention is temporary. Emotional investment creates continuity. A woman who is only temporarily interested disappears emotionally once stimulation fades. But emotionally attached women continue carrying emotional awareness of you even during absence. That's why emotionally intelligent men stop chasing dramatic proof. They stop forcing certainty from every interaction. Instead, they learn to observe emotional consistency across time, distance, and silence. Because attachment is not built from one intense moment. It's revealed through repeated emotional return. And ironically, the quieter the attachment becomes, the more real it often is. At the end of the day, emotionally mature men understand something most people never learn. Deep connection is rarely loud. It's usually subtle, consistent, and emotionally intelligent. So instead of obsessing over mixed signals or chasing constant reassurance, start paying attention to emotional patterns that quietly repeat across time. The women who feel deeply attached often reveal it in the smallest ways when they think nobody is noticing. And once you learn how to recognize emotional continuity instead of dramatic intensity, relationships start making a lot more sense. If you've ever experienced this kind of quiet attachment before, then you already know how powerful subtle emotional presence can become, even from a distance.